A number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. He said he knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia, controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all, in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country.
You know, I've got to say, Cenk, that just crosses every line of just basic human decency to me. Yeah, Rob Reiner was murdered last night by his troubled, unhinged son. And to make political capital, and what angers me about it is there was all the outrage from Trump supporters, rightly, when the left mocked Charlie Kirk after he was murdered. And I thought we'd reached a kind of consensus that this, whatever side of the divide you're on, this is just unacceptable. That when people get murdered, you just show basic respect. And it's just happened as we came on air. And I just thought we've got to start with this, because when you're the most powerful man in the world, listen, everyone knows I've known Trump a long time. But this is one of those times when many times he's been like this when big public figures have died. I remember it with John McCain. I remember it with Colin Powell. And each time I just wince at the lack of basic decency.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And cruelty doesn't become normal all at once. It becomes normalized when it's laughed at by mindless buffoons, minimized, turned into jokes, and treated like some sick, twisted form of entertainment instead of a warning sign of deeper failure of society. And the moment that we start valuing one life more than another based on ideology, skin color, or politics, we don't just lose ourselves, we lose our humanity. Because when basic human dignity becomes conditional, when respect depends on who you voted for, what you believe, or who you stand with, that's not democracy anymore. That's dehumanization. That's authoritarianism, plain and simple. A just society doesn't decide who deserves empathy or care. And the second it does, something has gone terribly wrong. And that brings us to what recently happened. Over the weekend, Rob Reiner and his wife were tragically murdered. It was a devastating loss, the kind of moment that should stop politics cold, if only out of basic human decency and respect for a grieving family. Instead, Donald Trump chose absolute and unbridled cruelty. In a post on Truth Social, Trump blamed Rob Reiner for his own death, invoking Trump derangement syndrome. When asked directly about the backlash, including condemnation from Republicans, Trump didn't walk it back. He doubled down, on camera, repeating the attack. It was shocking and drew a lot of emotional backlash and condemnation from all platforms. What makes this moment different is Republicans spoke out. Evangelical leaders spoke out. Conservative commentators spoke out. Even Trump's own supporters said, this crossed a line. And in the middle of all of this, it's worth remembering Rob Reiner's own words, spoken after the murder of Charlie Kirk.
When you first heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk, what was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems. And I felt like what his wife said at the service, that the memorial they had, was exactly right. And totally, I believe, I'm Jewish, but I believe in the teachings of Jesus, and I believe in doing to others, and I believe in forgiveness. And what she said to me was beautiful, and absolutely, she forgave his assassin, and I think that is admirable.
Reiner said, I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving the problems. Calm, clear, that's the line between disagreement and dehumanization. And dehumanization is exactly what Trump did. The gall, the nerve to say such heinous things is absolutely blood-boiling. And when disillusioned people try to turn Charlie Kirk into a moral yardstick on social media, deciding what's right or wrong based on how someone reacted to one tragedy versus another, they're turning grief into a loyalty test. And that is exactly what Rob Reiner was warning against. Political beliefs never justify cruelty, violence, or the stripping away of human dignity. Presidents are expected to unite the country in moments of loss, to lower the temperature, to reject political violence without condition, and to remind us of our shared humanity. That's not a lofty ideal. That's the job. That's the baseline. It's a litmus test for dignity, for empathy, for whether we still recognize one another as human beings even when we disagree. And when a president fails that test, the real danger isn't just the words themselves. It's what happens if we allow that behavior to become normal. Because a healthy society doesn't decide who deserves respect based on politics. It doesn't laugh at grief, and it doesn't excuse dehumanization from the highest office in the land, and it sure as hell should not be normalized in any way. Let's stop pretending we don't know what we're looking at. Donald Trump does this because he thinks he can get away with it. He believes he can do no wrong. He is a narcissist who cannot tolerate the possibility of ever being wrong about anything, oppositionally defiant and stuck in an abusive cycle, and a man who sucks up to Vladimir Putin instead of the country he claims to want to make great again. When he's confronted by reporters, by allies, hell, even by his own followers saying he went too far, does he reflect? Does he pause and think, maybe I crossed the line? No, he doubles down every time. Because in his warped world, admission is weakness and cruelty is proof of strength. He speaks in a crude way because that's what works for him. He knows exactly who he's talking to, a base that is undereducated, misinformed, and so thoroughly conditioned that they don't know the difference between indicted and indoctrinated. A base trained to confuse loyalty with morality and conspiracy with truth. These are the people taught to fear fluoride, mistrust doctors, demonize teacher, reject empathy as woke weakness, and believe that facts themselves are deception. Above all, they're taught one thing, that their leader is never wrong. And Trump rewards that. To him, these are useful idiots. He gives people permission to be the worst versions of themselves, to be cruel, to turn away from suffering, to laugh at death if the person on the receiving end is labeled the enemy. That's the bargain he offers. Unconditional loyalty in exchange for permission to abandon decency, loudly, proudly, without shame. History doesn't struggle to recognize this pattern. It never ends well. The degradation of language becomes the degradation of norms. The dismissal of one human life becomes the dismissal of many. And when a society is trained to see cruelty as strength and empathy as weakness, the darkness doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, tightening its grip, one excused moment at a time, until it's the status quo. And let's be absolutely clear about this before we end. What Donald Trump said about Rob Reiner was horrific. It was cruel. It was depraved. It was among the worst examples of anything a president can say in the wake of a human tragedy. History is full of leaders who used cruelty, mockery, and dehumanization to push power. And they are remembered not as strong men, but as stains, as warnings, as the darkest chapters their countries had to endure. That is the company Donald Trump places himself in. And the hypocrisy is staggering. This is a man who wraps himself in Christianity while openly violating its most basic moral commandment, to show compassion, to honor human dignity, to treat others as you would want to be treated. There is nothing Christ-like about mocking the dead, nothing Christian about turning grief into grievance, nothing righteous about cruelty masquerading as strength. What Trump said was not just offensive. It was disqualifying. It revealed exactly who he is and exactly what kind of country he is willing to turn us into. One where empathy is weakness, cruelty is virtue, and power is exercised without conscience. History will not be kind to this moment, and it will not be confused about who failed the test. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.